Okay, here is my story. Call it bullshit, believe it, whatever. Just take it as you will. I used to be really big into urban exploration. Heavy emphasis on the used to, because I have not explored anywhere in years since this incident happened to me and a friend of mine. I grew up doing it. I would bunk off school, scout around, and then once the internet got a lot better as I became a teenager and a young adult, I would go onto online forums and ask for recommendations of places and stuff like that. I was around 22 years old when this one happened. I'd been looking some forums for weeks, trying to find somewhere that we could go to that would give me a thrill. We'd been to abandoned hospitals, broken down mental asylums, pretty much anything that you can think of, and it was just not scary or fun anymore. We needed something new, something unique. We heard about this place a few states over from us in Washington, really out of the way and isolated. I'm not going to mention the specific area, but it was rural, really far away from any major city. The only thing that runs through the area used to be trains, but those tracks are all disused and abandoned nowadays and have not been maintained in years. Anyway, so it was supposed to be this military structure that has long since been abandoned. There is like a massive compound with a bunker that goes deep underground with multiple floors, and it's apparently as big as like a 2-story building, but going underground instead. Supposedly, it was manned 24/7 during the Cold War, but was abandoned sometime in the 1990s and had been left to gather dust, and it was now apparently overrun with plant life and moss and just whatever. The guy on the forum said it would be best to bring a respirator because the place was infested with fungus and weird spores. He also said that he'd done some research and found out that the place was built using asbestos, and if you breathe that shit in, you're definitely getting cancer. My friend Mike and I planned to take a week off of work, and then we would drive to the general location of the place, scout it out, explore, see if we could bring back some cool souvenirs or snap some pictures, and then we would probably camp out in the area and move on to other places. We packed some decent gear. I had one of those headlamp flashlight things, and I forced Mike to bring a respirator. He pissed and he moaned about it, but I made him because I didn't want anything to happen to either of us. He tried to explain it away, said that people on the forums were just trying to spook us and that nothing ever actually happens in these places, but I told him that he had to. I was not having him getting all messed up on my watch. We had some of our gear in case doors were stuck or were still locked. We had a crowbar and stuff. I know you're not really supposed to do that if you're an urbexer. I know there's the whole rule of take nothing and only leave footsteps. But honestly, we were in it for the fun, and I mean, screw all those stupid rules. We kinda did not care all that much. We decided to scope the place out during the early morning when there was not much light. We knew the place was abandoned, but we were still kinda worried. Depending on the location, the military still sometimes patrols abandoned sites, but it did not seem like anyone was near this one at all. At sites like this, you usually find big groups of homeless people, and they will attack you on sight and try to rob you of anything you own. Or they'll be all strung out like zombies and, I don't know, they're just weird. Luckily for us, Washington is a state that recognizes the concealed carry permit from out of state, so we did not have to spend time waiting and applying for a new one. Both of us were carrying CZP-10s. You genuinely never know when you might run into some aggressive, methed out homeless guy in places like this, and it's always best to be prepared. You don't want them sticking you with a used needle or worse. We found the bunker pretty quickly and made sure to put our equipment on before we headed inside. There was a door previously on the bunker, but it looked like it had either fallen off from age or been removed, and now it was just placed to the side, leaning against the wall. All the other military buildings in the area were in rough shape and did not look like they were even worth exploring. They looked like they had been burned to the ground and fully razed. Before I put on my respirator and got inside there, I could smell a horrible stench coming from inside this bunker. It smelled like a mixture of burnt leaves and human sweat. I was glad I would not have to smell it for the rest of the time that I was in there. The second that we got down there and began exploring, I began to feel weird. The corridors of this place were quite long and winding, and eventually ended up leading to some bigger square rooms throughout the place. Then there was also a ladder that took you down to the lower level. But yeah, when I entered, I felt weird. I felt tipsy, if that makes sense. Like when you have a small amount of alcohol and you get a little bit giddy and just a little bit looser. And I don't know, your skin starts to flush red and stuff. Not just that though. The air actually felt heavy, like on my arms. My arms were the only thing uncovered, but the air felt really thick on them. And not so much warm, but it was like what little warmth there was being amplified by the thickness of it. I felt like the more steps I took into the place, the more I was losing my balance, and the more I had to concentrate just to put one foot in front of the other. My arm was getting itchy too. I kept having to scratch it, and after walking around in there for a while, my skin was starting to turn this splotchy red in the place where I had scratched it. I think Mike was feeling these weird effects too. He kept having these fits of giggling out of nowhere. We'd just be walking, and I would ask him what he was laughing at, and in between these bursts of laughter, he'd just be like, I don't know, bro, and then just keep on laughing. Once we got down to the end of the first corridor and made a turn, I noticed something else. All along the walls, there was something growing on them. There was a ton of moss and overgrowth, but there were these vines growing across the wall, and they were thick. They looked as if they were inflated, as if they had something inside of them. I could hear this noise. It sounded like when you have mac and cheese and move it all around, but a little bit quieter than that. There seemed to be some kind of water, some kind of condensation all around these vine-type things, and they were dripping and looked really shiny. And then I noticed that one of them moved. Not like rapidly or anything. I walked by, and I guess the air displacement hit the thing, and I saw it almost twinge a little, like the air hitting the vine made it shiver. And then for a few seconds afterwards, I saw these vines start stretching out further just a tiny bit. I'm talking only a few millimeters, barely even visible unless you were paying attention. Mike was still laughing. He was like, "Dare me to touch one?" And I was like, "No, dude, you're not even wearing gloves. You could get all kinds of shit on your hands." I don't know though. I felt something coming over me. It was like the more he was laughing and the more he was acting like a jackass, the looser I started to feel. I don't know. I guess it just became funnier, like everything was just one big joke. We were there, just saying stupid random shit to one another, and he started doing this really weird dance, like a gorilla, and he was grunting too. So I started grunting back and playing along. I was talking like a caveman at one point, cause I don't know, I guess we just thought it was funny. I was like, "Grug bet $5 you won't touch," and then I just started slapping my chest like a moron. Looking back, I really don't know what came over me. I was 22 years old and acting like a damn child, but he took the bet and did this stupid caveman walk over to the wall and where the vines were, and then he takes his palm, slaps it down onto the wall, and then he just grabs a handful of the vines. The second that he grabs them, he starts shouting at me to help him. He's telling me that it burns and to get them off of him. I can see that after he grabbed them, there was something oozing out of them, and it's all over his hands at that point. It looks thick and goopy, almost like some kind of congealed substance, but it looks as if it's the same color as muddy water. I'm telling him to let go, shouting at him to wipe it off of himself onto the floor, but he's shouting back that he can't and that he is stuck. I can see that his palms are completely open and that he completely let go of the vines, but they are twitching and wrapping around his palm tighter and tighter. I rushed over to help him, but if I'm being honest, I was panicking hard. I had one of those foldable knife, vines/shear things for when you explore overgrown areas so that you can cut down thick and tall grass and stuff. It took me forever to even remember that I had them. That is how hard I was panicking. I managed to cut the vines finally, but it took me multiple attempts. These things were tough, and it felt like I was trying to cut into thick rope that was made out of like polyethylene or something. I ended up slipping once I got all the way through, and I ended up catching Mike's hand with the knife, and I made him bleed. After this, he instantly dropped to the floor, and he just started manically wiping his hands on whatever he could find, even partially onto his own pants. I could see that there was some kind of smoke coming out of where this little substance came from, a little bit from the vines, but it was dissipating. Where I had cut Mike, some of this shit had gotten into, and so we spent a while with the water that we had, trying to clean the wound and washing it out. Those vines had nothing on them that I could see, but when I was trying to cut them, it felt like I was being pricked by 1,000 tiny needles or something. I suggested that we should just go home and leave it for another day. There was no point staying here and Mike getting infected from whatever the hell that was, and that we should go and get it checked out by a doctor. He refused though. He told me that he did not want to spend hours in a waiting room, especially when we had come all of this way and taken the time off. We got into a bit of a back and forth, and we came to an agreement. We would check out the bottom floor of the place, and then we would head straight to a hospital. That ladder was sealed tight. It was blocked by a manhole cover that seemed like it had been glued into place or something. It was lucky for us that it had been worn down so much by time, otherwise we'd have had no chance at removing the thing with the crowbar. The second that we opened up that thing, we got a ton of smoke or steam or something that just floated up from the floor below. Again, it did not feel hot on my skin or anything. The ladders were barely stable in place anymore. I had to practically jump off at the final few steps and then hold it in place so that Mike did not fall down and break something. We went through a few corridors until we got to somewhere very unusual. The first thing that we saw was this big glass panel that seemed to span the whole width of the room. There were all kinds of things right by it. I'm talking monitors, computers, medical equipment, tons of paper with writing on them that were rotted to shit and were not legible anymore. The window was completely fogged up, so we could not see whatever was beyond it, but just around the corner, seemingly leading into whatever this room was, there was a door. But it was like one of those doors on a submarine that you had to turn the wheel to open and close, and it wasn't entirely closed either. It was open, but only by a couple of inches. There were some of those same vine-type things that were wedged into those few inches of the door and seemed to be growing outwards from multiple places. Every time Mike and I spoke to each other and it echoed around the room, I could see those things twitching and moving ever so slightly. Mike wanted to open up the door and see what was inside. I told him to remember our deal and that we needed to leave right now. He told me that the deal was that we would explore the entire floor, and then he just went over and approached the door. He was laughing again. The second that we got down to this floor, that feeling was getting stronger. The feeling of being tipsy. The only thing that was counteracting it was my fear, my worry for him. Mike could not even open the thing up. The door was rusted and would not budge an inch, and these vines in the door, the sound they were making was louder, and it sounded like they were squealing now. You know, like how when steam is escaping, it makes that high-pitched whine. That sound was coming from them as they were squirming in the gap of the door. I went over to help Mike, and it took us a long time, but eventually, we managed to move the door over enough for us to step inside. That is when I saw the sight of something I will never, ever forget. If we'd have left at any point before this one, this day would not haunt me even half as much. There was something in the middle of this room, this chamber. There were things all over the sides of the rooms. They almost looked like shower heads. And there were also vents in the walls and the floor and other kinds of things. There was some equipment set up on a tray further into the room, and there was some kind of a panel on the wall. I did not get close enough to find out anything more about them. This thing in the middle of the room, I can only describe it as some kind of a massive green overgrowth. Those same vines were coming off of it at various different points, and some of these vines reached up to the very height of the room. Some of them were at the vents on the walls and actually slithering into them. There were some small vines too that did not seem to grow at all. They were very close to the main bulk of this thing, and they looked to be quite sharp and barbed. It was genuinely just like a massive big ball of overgrowth and moss and vines, but in the center, there was something there, something that was a reddish color. It was shiny, and it was moving up and down. The entire thing was moving up and down, like it was beating like a heart or breathing even. Every so often, this beam of steam would just shoot out briefly from some section of this mass and then just dissipate into the air. Mike was, he was an idiot. He entered the room even though I told him not to. He started moving into a jog, and at some point he just tripped and hit the ground. He was not even looking where he was going, and he got caught up in one of those vines on the floor and just hit the deck. He managed to get back up to his feet, and he ran back over to me when I called to him, but that was it. The thing in the center, this mass, it went from beating to shaking. It seemed to be shaking quite rapidly and violently, and all of those vines that were high up on the walls and crawling into vents, it was retracting them at a speed that I don't think I'd ever seen before that point. All the vines near the doors, on the walls, they were all vibrating and starting to thrash and be thrown around the room. We started to run, but along the way, these vines kept jumping and whipping us, and it was so painful. Whenever they hit me, it felt like my skin was burning. I kept hearing Mike screaming in front of me, and at some point, I was not sure what happened, but I felt something hit my face really hard. It felt like my feet had been pulled out from underneath me, and I just slammed down onto the concrete floor face first. And boom, my respirator had just cracked. It was practically hanging off of my face. I was breathing in rapid breaths, and I could taste something really sour in the air. The air was so thick, it was hard to keep breathing it in. I know that Mike never stopped running. I could not talk because of the air, but I reached my hand out to him, and he looked at me, and he just kept on going. He looked back towards me, and he saw me, but he never ever stopped running. After that, everything becomes something of a blur. I was not actually there anymore. I was in this white void. I was obviously hallucinating, but I didn't have the cognition at the time to realize that. It's hard to describe what happened, but I just felt myself becoming angrier and angrier. There was a door at the end of this white void, but it was sealed shut. There was a tiny window that I could peek through, and Mike was standing right there. He was taunting me. He was telling me how I was going to die in there, that he was going to make sure of it. He just kept laughing at me, that same stupid laugh that he was doing earlier. And then he started making those caveman noises again and ridiculing me, and I just felt this level of anger I had never felt before in my entire life. My vision actually narrowed. I'm not kidding. It was like the outer edges of my vision just became black, so I could not see out of my peripheral vision anymore, and I could only focus on what was right in front of me. I could not control myself. I could not even move my own body. It moved on its own. The door was made out of metal, that same stupid type of door in that place, and I just started punching it really hard. When my fists first made contact, I could not feel a thing. I just kept going and going and going. Mike was on the other side, and I could hear him talking. He kept encouraging me, telling me to hit the door harder, asking if that was the best that I could do, telling me that I would die for being so weak. I just kept going and going and going for I don't know how long. And then at one point, reality just snaps back to normal. I am outside. The sun is bright in the sky and beating down on me, and I am sweating really hard. It's like a pool is pouring off of me. I am mid-motion, about to throw another punch, and then I hear Mike scream, begging me to stop. I realized that I was on top of him while he was laying on the floor. I had blood all over my knuckles, and his face was just a mess. He was barely even recognizable anymore. I had no idea what I had done. He just mumbled out a really weak, "I'm sorry I left you." And then he just passed out. He was still breathing. I was panicking. I could not get any signal out here with my cell phone, so I just grabbed him and carried him back to the car as best as I could. The nearest hospital was hours away, and I just had to pray to God that I could get him there in time. I got pulled over by the cops on the way there, and I explained I was taking him to the hospital, and they escorted me with sirens. I was speeding, that's why I got pulled over. Mike did not die, but sometimes I wonder if maybe it would have been better if he did. The police interviewed me, and I did not want to take the fall. I told him that we were urban exploring, and that a gang of homeless people managed to get to him and beat him senseless before I could help. They asked me where and for some descriptions, and I gave them the location of the bunker, but made up some bullshit descriptions and about how they had a hideout down there and blah blah blah. They never said they didn't believe me, and I never got arrested, so, who knows. I was shitting my pants. I knew that the second that Mike woke up, I was fucked, and that I was gonna go to jail. I don't even know what happened. I wasn't even really in control of my own body. 1 second, I am stuck on the floor in that place, and I cannot move. And the next second, I am in that white void, and then before I know it, I'm beating the hell out of my bro outside. It did not make any sense to me at all. It sounds really evil typing it out here now, but a part of me, just a tiny little part, that horrible little part of yourself that you tried to bury away and tuck deep down. It was hoping that Mike did not wake up, that it would be better for everyone. He did wake up, but he had no memory of the events that day. I spun him the same bullshit tale as I did the police. He was never the same again. He was in the hospital for weeks on a ventilator, and he had to eat through a straw. I gave him permanent brain damage, and to this very day, he cannot function on his own as an adult anymore. His own mother has to bathe him, because his brain just does not function enough to let him anymore. I was ashamed of myself, so I moved away. I have not seen him in years because I feel so guilty. I know how evil that makes me. I wish I could sit here and say that we're even because he was going to leave me to die in that place with my mask cracked, but he didn't deserve any of that. I just wish that I had some answers for what happened. If you're ever thinking of getting into urban exploration, if you're ever thinking of exploring abandoned military bunkers, don't. It's just not worth it. I wish every single day that I could go back in time and stop myself. Okay, so I want to tell you my story. It's not super long, but it is what it is. So, when it happened, I was living in Brainered, Minnesota. Last fall, before it started getting really cold, my friend invited me to go camping up in some forest up north. I'm no outdoorsman, but he is a good friend and I was bored, so I agree. It's a really long trek to get up there. We grabbed some food in Duluth, and then we left civilization behind. We set up camp. It was a really beautiful place. It was quite remote and next to a lake. We set up camp and then spent a few hours just dicking around. At one point, we were laughing our asses off like assholes over a dumbass joke. My buddy asked me to head out and get some more firewood while he gets dinner ready for us. I head out. It's a really beautiful spot, so I walk around for a bit, just exploring, taking the scenic route before I bother getting any wood. At some point of walking, I think I hear something. It sounds like brush moving or a twig snapping, so I stop walking around to see if I can make out the noise a little bit better. And then there's this smell all around. It smells like hot, rancid garbage all of a sudden. I figure maybe it's a skunk or a dead animal, and I hurry up to get branches and stuff. And then, out of nowhere, I suddenly hear what sounds like a man getting strangled in the middle of a laughing fit. I think, screw this, I am not sticking around for whatever weird shit is going on. I spin around on my heel and then start running back towards camp. I end up ramming face first into something. It's a head taller than me and pale as shit. I am too shocked to make out any of the details. I reach to my side and pull out my trusty fillet knife, and I just let loose. It's all fear-powered. I was just giving in to pure fear. I was just trying to stab into this thing. I can't even remember what happened past this point. I just have really spotty memories. I remember walking back to camp vaguely, and that's about it. I remember laughing my ass off over having dealt with that thing. I barely remember anything else. I know me and my buddy got out of Dodge that night instead of spending the night. I don't remember what happened to the thing. I don't remember seeing blood or it falling to the ground. I don't even remember walking off. It's just a pure blank. By the time I gathered up my wits, we were on our way home, texting and calling my friends and parents and stuff. I was pumped about heading back home. My buddy dropped me off. I remember he seemed really awkward and left in a hurry. He did not even come inside. I holed up in my apartment. I spent hours just watching YouTube videos, stuff like that. I just wanted to hear people talking to get my mind off of the trip. I called off work the next day. I didn't even get any sleep. I just watched a bunch of movies. I finally checked myself out. The only wound I have is a big gash on my thigh that I don't even remember getting, and it's already healing. I think I'm finally getting over what happened, even though I still don't really know what happened. I've been avoiding company for a few months, but that's not too unusual. I've been spending a lot more money on food too. I used to eat a lot of rice and salads and stuff, but I've been craving burgers and steaks and stuff recently. I'm thinking about inviting some friends up north for a camping trip when the cold is over. I still feel like I have some unfinished business. Okay, so this story is more creepy than anything else. I'm anything but terse, so this might ramble on for a while. It's just reminded me of something similar too, so I might post that one too. So, this happened to me when I was around 15 years old. It was not uncommon for people to randomly add you on MSN. This girl adds me. From her profile picture, she looks pretty hot. But I don't know her at all, so it could easily be a fake account or a fake picture. But we start talking and it seems like she knows a lot about me. We go to the same school. That explains it. I still do not recognize her though. I see that she has a webcam, and I send a request. She accepts, to my surprise. The cam quality back then was atrocious, and the FPS was about 2, if you were lucky. I can't see shit. The webcam is kind of in complete darkness. I tell her to put a light on, but she says that she can't, that her sister is asleep. It's barely even evening time. Whatever. We talk for a couple of weeks. She tells me I looked hot at school. She describes what I was wearing in great detail and certain things that I did throughout the day, so I know that she definitely saw me, but I never saw her. I tell her to come up to me in school so that I can talk to her properly, face to face. She tells me that she's too shy. She suggests that we meet near the leisure center. I have no problem with doing this because it's a really busy place with lots of people all around. She can't make it until about 8:15 p.m. That's fine. I get there. It's only then that I realize the leisure center shuts at about 8 p.m. and there is no one around. Plus, it's autumn/winter, so it's dark as hell. I just stand in this area that's devoid of light. My phone starts ringing. I go to get it out of my pocket. I see this guy, who must be in at least his 40s, across the road, half peeping from behind a back lane. I don't even answer the call and immediately go home. I have a message off of her right away, asking me where I was. I describe what happened and accuse her of being the man. She puts her webcam on to prove that she is real. This time there's a lamp on, but she is not in shot. She accidentally knocks the camera, and this man's face appears before quickly going back off. He warns me that he knows exactly who I am, and that if I tell anyone, he will murder me. I completely shit bricks. I can't say for sure that it was the same guy that I saw at the lane peeping on me, because, I never found out who he was. I never found out who the guy on the camera was either. It's not like I really could tell anyone. I had no proof. I never told any friends or anyone that I knew. I was more creeped out about how he knew things about my school life and stuff. I mean, how did he see me in school? It wasn't like you could just peek in from the outside. Was he a staff member? I don't know. Just thinking about it now sends chills down my spine.